This morning the ATF came out with their proposal toward bump stocks. There was a period of time where there was a lot of comment while they were deliberating over re-evaluating the bump stock as far as it being classified as a machine gun under the National Firearm Act or the Gun Control Act. Of course, President Trump has been a supporter of the ATF to go ahead and classify it as a machine gun. Much to many of our dismay. And of course also the NRA piped in as well. One of the things about this proposal actually, and I'm going to have a link down below, it's a really thorough read. I mean, it's a good read. It's not really in lawyer terms. It's very easy to read. And so I highly recommend you going down and just looking at the way that they put it. Now guys, before I get too far into this is just a proposal. They have made the decision to go ahead with their proposal to ban bump stocks, but you have until June 27th, 2018 to leave a comment regarding this proposal. And so I highly recommend, I'll have links down below in the description. But guys, we've got to make our voice be heard regardless. According to the ATF, there have been approximately 400,000 bump stocks sold in the U.S. There are two main manufacturers of bump stocks. There were 7 at one time, but because of litigation, only 2 exist. One solely to make bump stocks, one that's just part of their business. Over that period of time, it's generated about $96 million in revenue. Now, one of the things about all these numbers is that the ATF is estimating, they're guessing, because bump stocks are not regulated. There's no serial number, there's no background check, there's nothing. You just buy it. You could buy it at a gun show, you could buy it at a gun store, you could just buy it online. As far as production numbers go, these are where they're getting some of their figures, but there's still a wide variety or wide range in their estimation. Bump stocks have been on the market for 8 years now. And so over that period of time, obviously, there is a lot of people that are out there shooting it. What gets me is we have 400,000 bump stocks out on the market and the first crime that we've had. Now, one of the things about the bump stocks are, and for me, and when I made my statement to, or my comment to the ATF, is that machine guns are, one pull of the trigger and it continues to fire until you release or the ammunition runs out. And that's pretty much loosely the definition of a machine gun according to the law. With a bump stock, there's 2 forms to the trigger. There's 2 pressures. You pull it and then it goes forward, and pull it and it actuates on your finger. So that's still a finger action. One of the things the ATF is saying is because there's a small little brace that you rest your finger on, you keep it stationary, that it's still considered one pull of the trigger. And they go into a lot of definition. To me, it seems like that they're really stretching to make a point and trying to really make a point there. But guys, really, the trigger has to be activated, whether it's on your shoulder being bounced by by the recoil or whatever. It's still an actuation of the trigger. Again, I think that they're feeling a lot of pressure as well. I mean, for 8 years, this has been the law of the land. I mean, that bump stocks were fine. There was no problem with bump stocks. And now all of a sudden they're looking for a reason to classify these as a machine gun. Now, one thing that I was really looking for in the text was references to, trigger systems like the binary trigger from Franklin or the Fostech Echo triggers. Definitely those have a pull. You have to actuate the trigger with your finger. And so there's no way they're going to be able to legislate those triggers through the ATF. New law is going to have to be enacted to prohibit the use of those triggers. Of course, we'll see about that as well. One thing that they did kind of classify is that with the movement of the finger to a pull of the trigger, from a movement of the trigger to a pull of the trigger. And so I think but then they reclassified and said that a pull could also mean a movement of the finger. If this proposal is accepted and bump stocks are banned and become a machine gun, they will not be grandfathered in. You're going to have to destroy them, or you can send them into the ATF, or drop them by the ATF local field office for them to destroy them. One of the things they say is you can shred it, melt it, do whatever it takes to make it inoperable and not able to be restored. You know, there's no way they're going to be able to document who has them, much less who destroys them, but that is under the regulations. It was kind of funny that they said that there were 3 different alternatives to having the bump stock, and to go to a range that is a Class 3, has Class 3 weapons, and you can test fire these guns if that's what you want to do. One thing that I thought was kind of unusual was they said you could actually, you know, put it in your belt loop and fire it that way, or a rubber band, or whatever it is, you know, that the method you want to use to bump fire. Even it says train your finger to shoot faster. All those things are just fine. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk about how, well, you're gonna, you know, what are you gonna do, outlaw belt loops? Well, the ATF doesn't care if you use a belt loop. They don't care if you bump fire the gun. They just care that you do it with a bump stock. And so, and I'm not gonna get into a lot of the minutia and the regulation and what they're talking about, because you can go over there and read it. And again, I think it's a really good read. Now, of course, bump stocks are already banned in New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, you know, the usual suspects, but also, again, in Florida and Washington and California. So it's not going to really change anything there. But for the states that have freedoms to have bump stocks, you're no longer on the federal level going to be able to be in possession of a functioning bump stock. Now, again, this is just a proposal. This is not a final verdict or final decision, and you can still make comments all the way up till June 27th, 2018. Again, I'll have the link down below. You can just go to it. You can leave your comments. They will keep you updated. The email that I got was because I left a comment. And guys, don't be afraid to go to the ATF and sign in and register your comment. One thing I will say is, please be respectful, be polite. You know, these guys at the ATF, the people that are reading this, they have no sway personally over this decision, or that they even agree with it. They're just taking in the comments. And they do go through these comments. And overwhelmingly, the bump stock ban was opposed. And they even admit that. So guys, whether you have a bump stock or not, let your voice be known. Get in touch with the ATF. Let them know that we are watching and that we're holding them accountable. Even if they decide to carry through with this bump stock ban, guys, we need to continue to make our voice heard. Me personally, I don't like bump stocks. You know, I've only had one on the channel. It was a buddy of mine's, and I could have cared less about it. I'm just not a fan of it. But I am a fan of freedom, and I am a fan of the government not telling me what I can and can't have. You know, a lot of guys are saying, you know, really the Gun Control Act itself is unconstitutional. But, you know, guys, until that is the law of the land, and until we have it overturned, then it is what it is. Now, guys, one thing I do want to talk about is a lot of times where these regulations and these bills come up and people go off the reservation talking about the possibilities that can happen. One of the things that the ATF was clear in this is that this is not going to affect triggers or, you know, semi-automatic guns or magazines or anything like that. It definitely specifies bump stocks and why bump stocks, they feel, fall into the machine gun category. And that is definitely with the pull of the trigger. The trigger finger is the key to all of this. And so, you know, their definition of, you know, the action of the trigger to me is flawed, but that is a specific. I know a lot of times we have people getting on here, just like we did, you know, with the YouTube guides and regulations and the policies. And people just go to the nth degree. And guys, the problem with that is if you cry wolf too many times, you know, you're going to lose your effectiveness. And so we need to keep level. We need to look at what they're really doing and not speculate. But on the other hand, on the other side of that, we definitely need to be careful because wording can be twisted. But not every time. So let's just be careful. So guys, we have a lot ahead of us. And to me, this is a small thing compared to some of the things that we're facing with all of these rallies that happened last weekend. And guys, I mean, it has really brought a lot of media attention. Obviously, it's gotten a lot of the politicians thinking. We need to remind them that the majority does not agree and that these kids really, you know, they're being supported by leftist groups, and a lot of money is being thrown into this. Such a well-organized machine, there's no way a bunch of high school kids could put this together. And we've got to really stand against it. Again, guys, like I said earlier in the video previously, is we are a republic, and that means we have God-given rights that are law, and a democracy, which is the majority crying out for something, does not hold water when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. And you know, there was even a former Chief Justice that came out, I'm not going to mention his name, that said that we need to repeal the Second Amendment. And guys, we need to stand firm and let our congressmen, senators, the president know that we hold the Second Amendment to be sacred and not to be touched. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. And just a little tip, there's a ton of bump stocks over on Gunbroker. You can go over there. Their prices range from all over the place, but I know that many of you feel the responsibility to buy these stocks so you can take them and go ahead and destroy them once this proposal is passed.